Ladies and gentlemen, on the phone with us from Montreal, Canada, is one of our favorite guitar players and a great human being, Frank Marino. Hi, Frank.
Hi, Derek. Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
We were just really enjoying...
If you get Tracy a little closer to the mic, I really have a time hearing.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Just a little bit.
Okay, I'll try to project better. Derek projects better than I do.
Okay.
You know, Frank, you've probably done a million interviews in your life, and I'd like to start out by not going the nostalgic route. I'd like to find out about your brand new, if it's brand new. I hear it's a 6-hour box set, DVD Blu-ray set that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, it came out in just a few months ago. I'd been working on it for really a huge amount of years to finally get it put together. I'm real proud of it. I'm more proud about having completed the work because it wasn't supposed to take that long. There was some unexpected trouble with it. It was damaged, and I was faced with the decision as to whether to either fix the damage and put it out or just let it go. And I had decided that I was going to fix it, and I had kind of promised God I would fix it, so I did.
Nice.
It's not a promise I want to break, and so I did. And it took longer than I thought, but it turned out really, really good. And people are kind of liking it. I'm actually surprised at how many people are liking it because I didn't think it would do as well as it's doing.
Well, it's called Live at the Agora Theater, 6-hour live performance. The box set includes both the Blu-ray and the DVD format. That's kind of neat. Did you design it yourself?
Yes, I did, and there's a book that goes with that too. And there was a journalist that wrote the first half of the book, and it's kind of a historical, tale about the history of my life and our life in music. And then the last 20 chapters I wrote personally, which is basically about this whole episode of having made the thing and why and how and what went into it. So I think people find that a pretty good read, Yes,
I'm excited to soon get my own copy because I heard it's a 180-page book, and I want to read every page, man.
Yeah, I think you'll find a lot of information there that people, I'm still getting calls and emails from people saying, gee, I didn't know that was what happened, and gee, I didn't know that these things happen. Like, it's really quite revealing.
Well, yeah,
in many ways.
And well, one of the ironic things about having you on as a guest is you are one of those people I'd like to spend about 3 hours talking with, and our 30-40 minute format is not really going to do it, but maybe we can do a part 2 down the road. I like the fact that you're one of the rockers that doesn't have this huge ego. Matter of fact, you don't seem to have an ego, but I know that you left the business after your song Strange Dreams came out, and that was your chance at big stardom, and what was the deal? Did you turn your back on rock and roll, and what was the story, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I turned my back on the major, how news is called either news or mainstream media?
Yeah.
Well, in rock, you have the same thing. You have the mainstream record people and promoters, and then you have records and promoters. And I basically walked away from the mainstream of it. I had wanted to do that anyway for many, many years because I really was not comfortable with the corporatization of it and just the way that it was no longer about music. And I think from the day that I started with Columbia, it was just one argument after another and one disappointment after another. So by the time Strange Dreams came out, and we finally had this record that actually was a hit record. And then I saw them pulling the same stuff that they had pulled for so many years before. I just said, that's enough. I was supposed to do another record for Columbia, but luckily that contract that I had me as the person to exercise the option. They didn't have the option. I had the option. So I just called them up and said, I'm not exercising the option and I'm leaving. And they didn't think I'd do it, but I did.
Wow.
And I've been much happier since.
That's amazing. You don't hear many people that go the route of happiness. Most people sell out just, money, money, money. They have dollars in their eyes and they don't realize that they're kind of selling their own souls, sort of,
Well, I think what happened was that, okay, first of all, like, to be honest, like, I never really cared a whole lot about fame and money. That's just me, all right?
Yeah.
So it really wasn't as hard to walk away from it. But I think that people, thought that I did, and they said, well, look, you're playing 20,000 seaters, you're playing 60,000 seaters, you're doing festivals, you're on the biggest record company in the world, you're not going to just walk away from all that, are you? And I said, of course I am. And I did, and I didn't feel bad about it. But I think what ended up happening was many of the people who were playing with me or who were working with me, I think they felt bad about it. And I think that it sort of showed me at the time just, why some people do what they do. Because I'm just as happy playing. I'll come over to your house and play. Like, it's the same thing whether I do that or I play at a festival. I don't feel any more special because we're on a stage with lots of people than I would if I was in your basement jamming with you.
Wow, that's so respectable.
So it was very easy for me to walk away from all that.
Wow. What did you do in the interim when you walked away? What did you find yourself?
I started making less records. I started saying, why does the guy make a record every 9 months or a year? I mean, sometimes you just don't have anything to say. And so, there's this whole system in music that, I'm sure you well know. Oh, what's next year's record going to be like? And,
we want another single. What's the next big hit? What's the next big single?
Yeah, where did we ever get the idea that what we do, especially if we do it artistically, suddenly has no value anymore because we're going to do another one? It's almost like saying to me, it's like if I have a child and I have 3 daughters, imagine if somebody said, well, I've had this daughter now for a year, so now I've got to get the next one because now this one's not important anymore.
Yeah, because our music...
ridiculous.
Because music is like our children.
It is, yeah.
Well, it's really kind of stupid, so I never looked at it that way. So, once I did get out of the system, and I stayed, I got a lot of offers to get back in the system, believe me, especially then when we were playing such big buildings. But I said no. And I waited till 86 before I made another record. I called it Full Circle, and I didn't have another one out till almost 90.
Wow.
93 something or other, and then 2000. So, and then now this. So I really sort of spread it out, and I think that it's like a novelist. I think you want to write your book when you actually have a story to tell.
Yeah.
You have something to say.
Absolutely.
Not sort of invent one that you end up with a really weak story.
I was going to say the quality shows. When people put, another single, the label wants another single, and you just put out radio fodder, as I like to call it, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can absolutely tell the quality of the music suffers, and I think it's not only insulting to the artist, but it's insulting to their fans.
Well, I think things take time. I also produce bands and stuff, and a lot of times. And I build electronic gear. And so a lot of times the guys in the bands will say, well, I'm going to go to this studio and they've got this board and we're going to get that guy and this producer. And, they have this idea that it's going to somehow make them a great record. And I say to them all the time, I say, well, the only thing that makes a really great record is time. If you just do it honestly, it's not going to be done quickly. And you're going to do it well, and it's going to be good. So just give yourself the time to do it, but do it because you're actually doing it, not because you need to get it out there to fund your next tour or something.
Great point.
It's very important to me.
Just a quick side question: do you happen to have a particular favorite album or two amongst your own discography?
Of my record?
Yeah. Do you have a couple favorites?
Oh gosh, no, I could. No, I think my favorite record is always the one that's just out now.
Okay.
So I have to tell you, like the DVD right now is my favorite, and before that it was Real Live, and before that it was Eye of the Storm.
Well, that's the way it should be.
Say what?
I said that's the way it should be. That's great. You know, I mean, we only have right now, so why live in the past?
Yes,
you know,
I'm a very much a now living person. Like I live now, and I don't just say that because it's cool or it's hip to say that, and read it in a book. I mean, I really, really do. And I'm a little bit of a religious person, so I live on a very day-to-day basis. And
cool.
I believe that I believe that you only live one day. Really, not to put too fine a point on it, I believe that, I get up today and this is the day I'm living. And if I think about yesterday, it's actually exactly the same as if I dreamed yesterday happened. I could just as easily be telling someone I had this dream and it was yesterday.
Right.
But
yes.
it becomes the same. It has the same gravitas. It has the same weight. Once it's passed, it's still it's just a memory. And so I live for today, and tomorrow hasn't come yet. And when it does, guess what? It'll be today. So I try to live like today's the only day you live.
Beautiful. Well stated.
Absolutely. Hey, Frank, I am I'm just a big fan of early blues music, of early Delta blues stuff, Charlie Patton, Sonny Boy Williamson, that kind of stuff. And I know it's a generic question, and I did read, of course, I Googled you, and I did see some of your influences, but I wondered if you had any old Delta blues guys that you were particularly fond of, like, I don't know, Charlie Patton, Leadbelly, or anybody like that?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm the kind of guy who, if you were to play any of that for me, I would like it. But I wasn't necessarily influenced by it.
Gotcha.
And I know that it's almost like in our business, especially among guitar players, it's almost like they have to sort of pander to the idea that they were all influenced by older blues guys. The truth of the matter is, most of us were not. And I know that at some point it becomes the, how do you say, soup du jour, soup of the day.
Right.
But I mean, the truth of the matter is a lot of people who say that can't actually name you a lot of those songs. And they'll tell you Robert Johnson, or they'll throw out a couple of names, and they will like it. I'm not saying they don't. And I like it too. But I don't think we're aficionados of it as much as some of us say we are.
I have found that to be true.
That.
Yeah.
And I love to play blues, but I wouldn't want to be in a blues band, nor would I want to say I'm a blues guitarist, because blues is the kind of music that if you're playing it, I'm not talking about the idea of it now, just the physically playing of guitar, it's the kind of music that's really, really fun to play. You can play verse after verse after verse and never get tired, but it's hard to actually listen to verse after verse after verse when the guy's in the bar doing solo after solo in the same blues progression, and I think a lot of guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I want to be as honest as possible, and I think blues is largely misunderstood by some of the newer comers to blues. For instance, I have a friend who was in a rather famous band, who I won't mention, who said that he was going to do a blues record, as so many guys eventually do. And he started showing me some of the blues songs that he was, writing and doing. And I said, man, I said, blues is not necessarily about sad stuff and bad stuff. I says, that's what we sometimes think it is. But actually, every blues artist I've ever heard or seen seems to almost come at it from the gospel point of view, which means
absolutely
you might talk about how bad something was, but there's always hope at the end of the song.
Well, and there's spirit in the music.
So somebody might say, I woke up I always got up in the morning. Don't ask me why. I woke up this morning and my girlfriend left me and this happened and that happened, but it's okay. I still have this, or my bottle, or my guitar, or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think if you look back at the gospel music, that was kind of the same message.
Well, they all came from that.
Maybe things are not great, but it's okay. We have Jesus. Like they had the hope. I think you have to have that hope in blues music. It can't just be about maudlin stuff. And I think a lot of the guys that do their blues record, rock guys that become blues guys, they don't understand that about the message.
Yeah.
And I think that also has to be played that way. When you play your solos or you play your melodies, I think you have to give a kind of an uplifting feeling to the music so that it's not downward. It's not like feeling downward.
Sure.
I think that's important about blues.
Well, it's like they lift people. I mean, it's a spiritual experience. And I think you can tell the difference between someone who feels that, who has felt that experience that they're trying to play, and who hasn't had that experience. And I think it comes out through the playing.
Look, I've been working on my so-called blues album for about 20 years.
That's a lot of blues to build up.
It's always in a state of non-finished. And the reason is not because of the music. I've written some really, really nice music, and it's very different. It's really not what you'd expect me to have done. It's not like hard rock. It's very New Orleans-based, okay? It's almost like it doesn't even need a guitar.
Oh, that's wild.
Don't say that.
But the only reason I never finished it, and I keep going back and never finishing it, is because I don't actually have a message that would be honest.
Huh.
I can't actually honestly say that I have a life worthy of saying I've got the blues.
Wow.
And I just want to, whatever I do, whether it's music or, I don't know, building an amp or whatever, coming over and hanging out at your house and playing a video game, I want to do that with as much direct honesty as possible.
That leads me to my next question, Frank.
Yeah.
One time you were quoted as saying that the key to contentment is gratitude. Would you still say the same today?
Oh, it's absolutely the key to contentment.
Yeah.
And it's more than... The reason that I say that is because it's actually a logical construct. It's not like I'm not saying that I found some secret or that I learned that from a sage. It's actually quite logical. It's like if I said to you this: the man who loves his enemies soon has none. See what I mean? That's a logical statement.
That's a great
because
quote.
If you actually love your enemies, then of course you love them. They're not your enemies anymore, and then you have none.
Well, who came up with that quote originally? Do you know? I like that.
About the enemies?
Yeah.
Or about the gratitude?
Well, the enemies.
No, I say that. I just sort of say that all the time.
Wow, that's a good... I'm going to remember that one. Thanks, man.
Yeah, so, the man who loves his enemies soon finds he has no enemies.
Wow.
And a person who is grateful, well, soon finds he's content, because how can he be grateful without contentment?
Good question, yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make. And it's very much like... my wife once said to me a long time ago, she wanted a certain kind of car, okay? We were looking to buy a used car. Could never afford a new one, but we needed a used car. And she said, oh, there's this new car by Chevrolet, and it was called the Lumina. I remember, because she used to say, Lumina, Lumina.
Mm-hmm.
And so once she mentioned that to me, we'd be driving on the street, and she'd go, oh, there's a Lumina, and there's a Lumina, and there's a Lumina. And all of a sudden, you started seeing millions of these Luminas. And it occurred to me that it wasn't just a bunch of cars that decided they would pop out in front of us. It was just that we were noticing what we hadn't already noticed was always there.
It's kind of like the 11:11 thing, noticing the clock when it has 11:11.
So here's the thing about gratitude. The good stuff in a person's life is 99% and less than 1% bad. But they don't notice that. Now, most people will tell you 50-50. Oh, yeah, it's 50-50. I have my good days and my bad days. That's actually not true. What they have is they have a certain moment on one day out of a week that's bad, and the other 6 are usually pretty okay. You only have to look at your own day today, what time you got up, how many bad things happened to you today, and probably nothing did. So most of your life is, if you extrapolate those numbers of what happens to you in any one given day, and you extrapolate it over 300 days and, however many years, you'll see that quite often we have way, way better lives than we think we do, but we just like to think we don't.
Yeah, we're spoiled brats.
So if we see the bad, it's like the Lumina. We're going to see the bad only and think that's all that's there. But you could turn that around. You could see the good, and you could only see the good. And then, by the way, you'll be very content because you'll be very grateful for all the goodness around you.
Well said.
And that's what I mean by gratitude is the key to contentment, because you have to first find your gratitude, and you can only find that if you realize that things are a lot better than you think they are.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Hey, Frank, I have a couple of questions just real quickly there from a couple of listeners. And I think I know the answer, but I wanted to hear it from you. And somebody did ask how the name Mahogany Rush came about. That was one of our fan questions. I know. Can you tell us real briefly how that came about?
Okay, well, Mahogany Rush was a pair of words that I used as a 14-year-old kid, actually 13 going on 14, in order to describe to doctors in an insane asylum what I was experiencing.
And did they get it?
It had nothing to do with the band. It had nothing to do with music. I wasn't yet playing guitar. And I had gone to the hospital on overdose of LSD, which I'd been doing for years, and then I just really overdid it, and I blew my mind, and I was very ill for a long, long time. And so they didn't know what to do in 1968 with a kid like that, so they threw him in a hospital, and that's where I learned to play guitar. So when the doctors would come to me and say, try to describe, what is it you're afraid of, or what are you thinking, or why are you panicking, or why are you freaking out, I'd be telling them I'm having a mahogany rush.
Wow.
It was the way that I was describing the sensations that I was getting on this trip. And it's a very long, detailed story, but those pictures on my early album covers, Child of the Novelty, Strange Universe, those pictures are very much descriptions of where I was, of the world I lived in, and until I, managed to come home.
Wow.
And so Mahogany Rush was simply the words to describe that experience. And when I later got into a band, or made a band, the idea of making a band wasn't so that we could make records or go be a band. It was just a bunch of kids getting together to have fun or, to pass the time. And I'd be doing what I called Mahogany Rush music because I was trying to do the music that would describe my trip.
I love it.
So the band became known as Mahogany Rush, but it wasn't really a band name. It just sort of stuck. So that's what it meant.
Well, wow, that's a much more interesting answer than I thought it was going to be. Much more interesting.
Yeah, I found out many years later that there's actually furniture called Mahogany Rush.
Wow.
Of course there is, right?
Believe it. When I found that out like in the 80s or 90s.
Another question that someone asked was, on the internet, it does say that some of your acknowledged influences are Robbie Krieger, Dwayne Allman, Johnny Winter, and Carlos Santana. Is that pretty accurate? Would you say those guys are...
what was the third name you mentioned?
I think Johnny Winter was the third one I mentioned.
Oh, yeah, Johnny Winter, yes, of course. Well, yes, obviously, and I can tell you all of them right in a nutshell. There's basically John Cipollina from Quicksilver was a very big one.
Actually, he's on the list too, but I wasn't sure how to pronounce the last name, and I didn't want to butcher it.
Yeah, John Cipollina. Well, they call him Cipollina, but anyway, I'm Italian, so I know how to say Cipollina.
Okay.
Chipolina.
See, I would have butchered it.
John Cipollina of Quicksilver was a big influence. Johnny Winter, Jimi Hendrix, Dwayne Allman, Carlos Santana. Those were the earliest. The Grateful Dead, actually, too. That was also an early influence of mine.
Robbie Krieger.
But, yeah, and Robbie Krieger, for sure. I loved Robbie Krieger, and I still do.
He's very underrated, I think.
Yeah, because the guys I'm talking to you about, if you think about, now you ask yourself, well, what do they all have in common? It's like they don't play performance guitar. It's all about, it's expressive. It's sound. It's expressive.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Richie Havens was a friend of mine for a while before he died, and he said to me once about Jimi Hendrix, he said, well, Jimmy didn't play the guitar, he played the amplifier.
Wow.
And that made a whole lot of sense. Because as a pure guitarist, when you're talking about as a guitarist, Jimi Hendrix didn't play technically fast or quick or do arpeggiations or sweep picking or any of those techniques that guys think about when they think about guitarists. he played sound. And I don't think you'll be able to find a Jimi Hendrix song, even a single song where he played fast at all. And yet
That's
someone
true.
thinks if they do their Jimi Hendrix impression, they automatically play fast, and that's certainly not Hendrix. And if you think about the other guys like that, whether it's Robbie, who also wasn't not a great technical player, John Cipollina, all these guys, they're expressive players. They play like they're singing.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what I like to do.
I think
I like
I
to
get
say, what if the guitar was my voice? What would it sing? And it has to stop. It has to take breaths. It has to pause. It has to take breaths. And I often, when I'm teaching kids to play, I tell them, play only when you're breathing out. And when you breathe in, don't play any notes. And it'll sound more natural. It'll feel more natural. Your phrases will time better because you would sing it that way.
Great advice.
That's a great answer. Frank, we're going to have to wrap it up here shortly, unfortunately, because I could talk to you for days. But I did want to ask you real quickly, when you listen to music at home, if you do even, what does Frank Marino listen to? Like,
Good question.
Well, I listen to Buddy Rich.
Hey, awesome. We love Buddy Rich.
I was a drummer when I was a kid, and I still am. So I love listening to swing.
What about Hal
Like to
Blaine?
listen to. I've got some great Buddy Rich records, big band and stuff like that. I mean, I really, really like that, and I love to play my drums to it.
Oh, wow. How about Hal Blaine? Do you like Hal Blaine as well?
Yes, of course.
Hal Blaine was here. Hal Blaine is
him.
everywhere.
Yeah, so now you're talking my language here. So
Yep.
Nice. Well, maybe we can
when
do
you say,
a...
what's Frank got on at home? Like I was building my amp the other day, and what did I have on in the background? That's the kind of stuff I have on in the background.
Well, we like that
That's
stuff.
what's going on in my brain, that kind of stuff.
Well, Frank, I host this show on Sundays called Earth Heart, which is a spiritual show, and I'm wondering if there's any chance I could invite you on in the future to talk spiritual matters.
Oh, absolutely. But when you say spiritual, I want to know what you mean by that, because some people mean a different thing than I do. Some people think that you can have spiritual without God, and I don't believe that.
That would be something good to discuss on the show, I think, because I think some people have that question.
Well, I believe God is both with form and formless, and that everything is of God. And I think that would be amongst the belief that yes, it is definitely
I would love to talk to you about that stuff. I am a theologian. I'll tell you right now. I've been doing it for 40 years.
Wow, nice.
I'm very much a student of that.
You'd be a great guest.
And that's not why I'm spiritual, but yes, I would love to talk to you about that.
Thank you. Well, thanks for your generosity. Thanks for talking to Sister Tracy and I tonight. We really appreciated it, Frank. We love your music, and I love you as a human being, and I appreciate you taking the time.
You were my favorite uncle's favorite musician, and he's passed away since 2013, but I know you've heard that kind of stuff before, but it's just a real honor to speak with you, and I know my Uncle Ben is somewhere going...
Well, I hope we talk again. I hope it doesn't have to just be for an interview. You have my phone number. You can call me anytime.
Don't say that, because I'll call you at 3 a.m.
Oh, no, I'm very, very serious. And, some people say stuff like that being polite and nice, but if you go around and you ask people about me, they're going to tell you, Frank's not kidding.
No, I believe
the truth. Call him.
Well, you told me that you stay up till like 6 a.m, and so that's kind of the hours we keep.
I mean, half of my friends, if not more of my friends, they were fans and that became friends. It's just the way it happens. Okay, just call me up. Like
that's
I'm not
pretty
a big.
Cool.
I don't have an iPhone or anything, but I don't do the social media thing. But yeah, I just love to talk to people about stuff. I really do. So, Tracy, if you want to call anytime, and you too, Derek.
Too cool.
Awesome, man. We really appreciate you so much.
Yes, absolutely. You're so awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Frank Marino, and best of luck, my friends. The brand new DVD release is a box set called Live at the Agora Theater. I'm sure if you were to look it up, you could find it, and it's easy to find, Frank Marino.
There's an internet ad for it. You could see... just look up Frank Marino DVD trailer, and you'll see everything about it.
Frank, have a great evening. I'll be in touch about the Earth Heart Radio thing, and thanks again.
Thanks you, Frank.
Derek. Bye, Tracy.
Thanks so much, Frank. Thank you.